The morning air was thin and cool at the mountain lake. A light breeze brushed the surface of the water, causing ripples that shimmered beneath the rising sun. Pine trees whispered softly along the shoreline. A man sat on a wooden stool at the water's edge. He wore a simple flannel shirt, worn boots, and a quiet expression that suggested he had long ago stopped being surprised by life. His fishing line drifted lazily in the water. He was called the Thinker. He was humming softly to himself when the air behind him folded inward. Reality bent, color fractured. From the Terran existence stepped the Beyonder, in his pre-retcon form, a being whose power once dwarfed entire multiverses. He looked around with faint irritation. "Earth," the Beyonder said, as if tasting the word. "Again!" The Thinker did not turn around. "You're scaring the fish," he said calmly. Beyonder frowned. "You are aware of who I am?" The Thinker lifted the rod slightly, adjusting the line. "I'm aware someone just tore a hole in a peaceful morning." Beyonder walked closer, curiously annoyed, as power radiated off him, pulsating. "Mind your tone, human. I am beyond your universe," he said. "Beyond your gods, beyond your physics. Entire realities move at my whim." The Thinker nodded slowly. "Oh, you don't say." Beyonder pauses and tilts his head. "You don't seem impressed," Beyonder said. The Thinker finally looked over his shoulder. "Pardon me for being so blunt, but you look absolutely bored." The Beyonder blinked, energy crackling at the corners of his eyes. "What did you just say?" The Thinker looks up at the sky and ponders a little and says, "Let me clarify. You look apathetically disconnected. In other words, bored." What a strange thing to say. I'll play along. I wouldn't say I'm bored. More like I'm deciphering the complexities of the doldrum of time. "Yes," the Thinker replied gently. "That's what I said. You're bored. What I find strange about this is a powerful being like you, mincing words, interesting." The Beyonder folded his arms. "You think that is some weakness?" The Thinker returned his gaze to the water. "It is." The Beyonder's voice sharpened. "You don't seem to be aware of what I am, and the honor that I am bestowing upon you by even gracing you with my voice. I possess power beyond comprehension. I could erase this planet with a thought." The Thinker shrugged. "And yet, you're standing here talking to a fisherman." Silence hung between them. The Beyonder studied him. "You are unusual," he said. "Most humans tremble." The Thinker chuckled quietly. "Most humans don't get visits from cosmic tourists before breakfast." The Beyonder's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand the scale of my power." The Thinker cast the line slightly farther. "Do I?" Beyonder gestured toward the sky. "I could reshape reality, create galaxies, destroy universes. Yet," the Thinker said softly, "you cannot stop being bored." The words hung in the air. The Beyonder frowned, and "That is irrelevant." "Is it?" The Thinker leaned back comfortably. "Power means control. If something controls you, then you're not omnipotent. You're negotiating." The Beyonder stepped closer. "I control existence itself, but not your own dissatisfaction," the Thinker replied. A breeze rippled across the lake. The Beyonder looked out across the water. "I have experienced everything." The Thinker smiled faintly. "Everything you say, really? I will go out on a limb and say, no, you haven't." That word, everything, that absolute statement, means that you see nothing. The Beyonder turned sharply. "Don't push me, human. I have seen infinite realities." "Infinite realities, you say? So what? If you can see multiple realities, it means very little if your perception can only observe certain angles. In actuality, everything could come off as a flawed overestimation of oneself. For example, The conundrum of your boredom is staring you right in the face. Can you see what that means? The Beyonder didn't know why he was becoming uncomfortable and irritated, but he resigned himself to find out where this human was going with this conversation, he says sarcastically. Go on, by all means explain to me. The thinker pointed at the sunrise reflecting across the lake. I've seen this sunrise thousands of times. And? Beyonder asked impatiently. And I've never been bored by it. The Beyonder stared at him. The thinker continued. Humans eat every day, breathe every day, watch the sky every day. And somehow, we still enjoy it. The Beyonder's expression hardened. That is because your minds are primitive. The thinker chuckled. Or maybe our minds are adapted. The Beyonder said nothing. The thinker reeled the lines slowly. You chased novelty, he said. Conflict, drama, new sensations. Yes, Beyonder replied, because repetition is meaningless. The thinker tilted his head. To you. A fish splashed somewhere across the lake. The thinker spoke again. You're still thinking like a man. The Beyonder's voice dropped. I am not human. No, the thinker agreed. But you inherited the same flaw. He gestured toward the mountains. You think power means control over reality. Beyonder crossed his arms. That is the definition. The thinker shook his head. No. He pointed at himself. Real power is being content inside limits. The Beyonder laughed. That is the philosophy of the powerless. The thinker pointed calmly toward the lake. You said you could erase planets, create galaxies, rewrite existence. Yes, but here you are, the thinker said, complaining about boredom like a tired emperor. The Beyonder remained silent. The thinker continued. You speak about power the way conquerors always have. The Beyonder tilted his head. Conquerors? The thinker reached into an old canvas bag beside him and pulled out a small portable radio. It crackled with static before a recording began to play. A harsh voice echoed through the quiet mountains, a speech filled with certainty, grand declarations of dominance, promises of destiny and authority. The Beyonder listened, his expression darkened. That voice, he said slowly. That man believed himself destined to rule humanity. The thinker nodded. Yes. He looked calmly at the Beyonder. That was Adolf Hitler. The radio clicked off. Silence returned. The thinker rested the device beside him. Listen closely to the structure of his thinking, he said. Absolute certainty. Grand claims about destiny. A belief that power justifies control. The Beyonder's voice hardened. You compare me to a human tyrant? The thinker shook his head. No. He paused. I'm showing you the pattern. The Beyonder stared at him. The thinker continued. When someone thinks power means domination, they start sounding the same. A ripple crossed the lake. You speak about reshaping worlds, the thinker said calmly. About imposing your will. He glanced up at the Beyonder. That's not stability. It's chaos. He pulled the fishing rod slightly, feeling tension on the line. Let me ask you something. The Beyonder waited. Did you create the universe you live in? The Beyonder hesitated. No. Did you create the laws that allowed your power to exist? Another pause. No. The thinker nodded. So, you didn't build the system. The Beyonder's eyes narrowed. What are you implying? The thinker looked back at the water. You're not the architect. The Beyonder said nothing. You're a user, the thinker continued. A very powerful one. He shrugged. But still a user. Beyonder's voice grew colder. I transcend the multiverse. Oh, maybe, the thinker said. But you still operate inside something. The Beyonder went quiet. The thinker continued gently. That makes you less like a god. He glanced back. More like a reality hacker. The wind picked up across the lake. For the first time, the Beyonder seemed uncertain. You speak as if you know something greater than me. The thinker shrugged again. I know my limits. That is meaningless. Is it? The thinker pulled up his fishing rod. A small trout dangled from the line. He carefully removed the hook and released it back into the water. I can't control the universe, he said. I can't control time. The Beyonder watched closely. But I can control how I experience what I'm given. The fish swam away. The thinker wiped his hands on a cloth. And somehow, he added, that's enough. The Beyonder stared at him. Something strange flickered across his perception. He scanned across timelines, across realities, across variations of this man. Millions, billions. Every version of the thinker was the same. Calm, unmoved, content. The Beyonder frowned. That should not be possible. The thinker tilted his head. What shouldn't? You are insignificant, probably. And yet, the Beyonder's voice trailed off. You're not afraid. The thinker smiled. Why would I be? The Beyonder searched deeper. Across the multiverse, across probability, across cosmic structures, and something disturbed him. There was stability. The thinker was anchored in something the Beyonder could not measure, could not influence, could not even properly perceive. The Beyonder stepped back slightly. You are protected. The thinker laughed softly. By what? The Beyonder didn't answer. He looked at the lake, at the mountains, at the quiet man with the fishing rod, and for the first time since entering this universe, the Beyonder felt something unfamiliar, not boredom, not curiosity, but the subtle awareness that the contest had already been decided, and no reality had been altered, no power had been used. Yet somehow, he had lost. The Beyonder's voice softened. You believe I am limited. The thinker nodded. Of course you are. The Beyonder frowned. I command reality. Yes, the thinker said, but you still think like a man who just discovered power. He paused, like a child who found the controls to a machine he didn't build. The wind grew quieter. The thinker's voice lowered slightly. Power without appreciation becomes destruction. Selfishness eventually eats itself. He looked back toward the sunrise. That's just history. The Beyonder studied him again, across timelines, across worlds, across countless versions of this same quiet man. The pattern remained unchanged, still calm, still grounded, still unmoved. The Beyonder spoke carefully. You believe my power will destroy me. The thinker shrugged. Not necessarily. Only if you keep misunderstanding it. The Beyonder tilted his head. And what is the correct understanding? The thinker smiled faintly. Power isn't proven by what you can destroy. He pointed toward the lake again. It's proven by what you can sustain. The Beyonder looked across the water. The lake existed in perfect stillness. No domination, no control. Just balance. The Beyonder spoke quietly. You are certain of these ideas? The thinker nodded. Completely. And why is that? The thinker looked up at the sky, because across all the realities the Beyonder had searched, this answer never changed. The thinker spoke calmly. Because truth doesn't need power to exist. He leaned back on the stool again. And real power doesn't need to announce itself. The Beyonder said nothing. For the first time since he had entered the universe, he wondered if the fisherman understood something about existence that even he did not. The Beyonder paused, looked up and spoke. Maybe there is another way of perceiving. I need time to process this new discovery. And that invitation of yours, thinker, I will definitely hold you to it later on. Then, with a quick snap of energy and power, the beyonder was gone, leaving the thinker on the banks of the lake smiling with contentment.